morning. I really appreciate your time this morning. And yes, again, my name is Indiana Flora, and I am one of the attorneys that is staffing the 2019 Charter Revision Commission, as well as the Director of Outreach. And I just am here to give you a little bit of an overview of what the commission is, what our timeline is, and ways to plug in. And I know that many of you have been very active with the other mayoral commission that put issues on the ballot this November. So, I will kind of do a broad overview, and to the extent that you have more specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'd like to start out with just showing you a very quick 90-second clip, if that's all right with you.
Have a chance to help shape New York City's future. The 2019 New York City Charter Commission needs your ideas to create a better charter. In 1897, the charter, our city's constitution, was created to control how the city spends our dollars, how decisions about our neighborhoods are made, and the power of our elected officials. It's time for a fresh look, a top-to-bottom review. The 2019 Charter Commission needs New Yorkers at public hearings and share ideas that will shape how our city looks and runs in the future. We've already heard from New Yorkers who want the commission to look at how to increase civic participation, how land is developed, and to evaluate the balance of power within city.
No, it's on a flash drive, but that's okay. I can. Why don't I, in the interest of time, continue, and then if we can get it up, we can watch the last 30 seconds. A lot of it is about our social media, so I can just, give you all the handles myself. But basically, as you know, there were 2 charter revision commissions that were working this year to improve our city's structure. It's charter revision is like the charter, actually, is like our city's constitution, and it sets the framework. It assigns the duties of our elected officials. It covers campaign finance, how we elect our officials here at the city level. It talks about procurement, about land use, and also about the city agencies and the duties of the agency, the commissioner, and appointments to head up those agencies, to just name a couple of the big picture items that the charter covers. The 2018 commission has wrapped up its work, and that was put together by the mayor, who appointed 15 commissioners, and they focused their efforts on community boards, on increasing civic engagement in New York City, and on campaign finance. The commission has wrapped up its work. The ballot initiatives, as we said earlier, was on this ballot a couple weeks ago, and they all moved forward. The 2019 commission is actually just now ramping up its work. So the ballot initiatives will be on the November 2019 ballot. And we did take a little bit of a lower profile to give the mayoral commission and those ballot initiatives the space and the discourse and the coverage that such important questions deserved. And when we reached out to some of the community boards in September and even October, a lot of them were focused on the community board question. And so that's why we're here now in November. In September, we had a round of hearings, one in every borough. And while we certainly did a lot of outreach for those hearings, I have to say we surpassed our own expectations on the turnout for such a wonky and vague issue. All of our hearings ran at least 3 hours, and our Manhattan hearing ran until 1 in the morning. So there already was a lot of, I think, awareness and interest in this process. And in October, as we started our outreach, we did not do a very robust, super grassroots outreach effort, because we didn't want to confuse folks about the issues on the ballot and when to vote. As we were reaching out to community groups, I said, this is a lot of messaging about 2 commissions and what year are they going to go on, what are the issues. So we focus on organizational outreach. So we've hit a lot of coalition meetings like the Human Services Council, which, umbrella organizations basically. We've reached out to the New York Immigration Coalition, to Supportive Housing Network, to parks and green coalitions, so to speak. And we've been popping into staff meetings or coalition meetings and brainstorming a little bit at the staff level, because they can speak to issues like city contracting, a lot of them, as well as the work themselves and the needs of the clients that they serve. Now that the election is over, we will pivot. We'll continue to do that organizational outreach, but we are also, here at the community boards, we are going to do more tabling and info sessions at the community level. I've got these pamphlets, which I'm happy to pass around. There's like 5 tucked into these, so just grab one and please pass along. It's our Charter 101 pamphlet. It's what we're handing out in the community. And we will have them available in addition to English in 11 additional languages, and they should be up, if not this week, next week. So we'll have the top 10 languages other than English that are spoken in New York City, as well as Yiddish. And there's a couple more. We've got plenty, so I'm happy to pass them out. They're also available on our website. And so that's kind of the overview of what we've done. And looking ahead, where we are right now in the process is, yes, we had our hearings. We had over 300 individual proposals come through that way alone. But we realized that hearings are intimidating. A lot of times folks can't make it out or can't wait until it's their turn to testify. So we certainly encourage other ways to submit ideas. And so we've received a lot through our website. There's a tab where you can input your ideas in a field and hit submit. You can also upload documents that way. We've got a very general info@charter2019.nyc email address, and we've received a lot of proposals through that email. And that is where we're really directing folks to submit ideas so that we can, it auto-populates a spreadsheet and it's easy to track. And hearing testimony and written testimony is posted on our website as well if you're interested in looking through that testimony. Hearing videos are online and transcripts as well. We continue to take ideas in really any issue area. What we're hoping to do right now is get a really strong sense for community priorities, ideally by the end of this month, so that in December, commissioners can come together and start to pick out what issues they'd like to explore further. A year does give us a lot of time to do a deep dive on some important issues, but we obviously can't overhaul the entire city government structure. So we're trying to get a sense for what are the issues that New Yorkers care about most right now. And I will say that it is very helpful to get individual submissions or ideas that say, our proposals are supported by this coalition and list the 50 organizations, but more voices doesn't necessarily mean that an issue will advance, because we would never want to disadvantage a smaller organization or a group that just doesn't have the manpower to do a letter writing campaign or an outreach effort. So what we're doing right now is we're compiling the testimony. They're forwarded to commissioners, so they'll be able to see what is submitted multiple times or what is submitted on behalf of a larger group. But as far as the ideas go, they're kind of valued, they're weighted the same, whether one person submits it or 100. In December, there will be a public meeting, so we won't be taking community testimony, but that is the meeting where they'll discuss a little bit more about what issues advance. And then in January through March, we will have issue-specific public hearings. So if we heard a lot about animal shelters at our hearing, so if that were an issue that we're going to advance, we might have one that is focused on animal shelters, and if we had something else that was related or made sense to put together, focus on those issues. If land use were to advance, it would likely be a hearing focused just on land use or procurement or it will be focused on the issues. Then later in the spring and into the summer, we will have there will be draft proposals released based on your ideas and feedback, and then individual sort of working group meetings that we're having with stakeholders. These are the proposals we're thinking about, and there will be a round of hearings, one in each borough, to accept testimony on those proposals. And so we just continue to refine as the process goes along. The final proposals will likely be ready end of August or September, because there is a hard deadline in September to submit them to the Board of Elections so that they can be put on the ballot. And so at that point we pivot, and it's about community education, making sure that this really is on everybody's radar, and a big get out the vote effort. And staff will not be taking a position on the proposals, and I want to make that very clear, because this commission has commissioners who are appointed by the various city elected officials. So the bill was sponsored by Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer and by Public Advocate Letitia James and City Council Speaker Corey Johnson, and was passed by the City Council. And so they each have appointees. The council has 4 appointees. The mayor has 4 appointees. Each of the borough presidents has 1 appointee. The public advocate and the comptroller each have an appointee. And so this means that there are a lot of different interests on the table, a lot of, there's geographic diversity, there's professional experience and diversity there. We've got Reverend Clinton Miller, who comes from the faith community. We've got Free Legal Services represented. We've got former council members and folks who work at city agencies or here, like Commissioner Karras, with the Manhattan Borough President's Office. And so we're not taking a position. Our job is to raise awareness that this is happening, to educate the community, what is the charter, what is a revision commission, and how can you plug in. And personally, as director of outreach, my goal is to demystify this a little bit, right? Like, I never gave the charter a second thought until I worked in city government. And so we want to just really get the message out that we're not expecting a memo. We're not expecting you to have like a super specific idea or answer. That's what staff is doing. Let us do the work. You tell us what are the issues. If you've got ideas for a change, submit them. It can be 2 sentences via our website. And then staff will decide, is there a charter amendment here? How does that tie into some of the other ideas that we've received? And the second really important messaging piece is, even if you don't have a specific idea, I know that all New Yorkers have opinions. And so as we get further along in the process, chime in there. Yes, this is a priority for me, or no, I think this is a waste of time and money, I don't like it. Or I like the general goal, but not necessarily how you're thinking about getting there. And so we're hoping to get feedback that way as well. And I think before I open it up for questions, the final thing I'll say is we're really looking for opportunities to tap into events, tabling events, info sessions. We are a small staff, so to the extent that we can do either community board groups, that's kind of why I'm here, because we have representation from each of the community boards. We didn't have the staff to go to each board individually, but if community groups or places of worship can kind of come together, we can do regional or however it makes sense to organize, but events like that where we can really hit a lot of people. And honestly, this process has to be community led. We're happy to come out if we've got the staff, but again, we're a small team, so to the extent that we can plug into things that are organized, it certainly increases the chances that we can kind of quickly pop in, do our spiel, and pop out. So I think I will leave it there, because I'm sure there are lots of questions. I'm happy to take them at this time.
Questions, comments?
I just want to pipe up and say
Absolutely.
If by the end of the month you could get us things as simple as, the procurement process should be streamlined for small not-for-profits, or the land use process, the ULURP process should be opened up for X, or more streamlined for Y. I mean, it literally could be a couple sentences so that we know how important certain things are to what communities. And then when we have our a public meeting and a public hearing on the land use area or the procurement area, you can come in with more specific thoughts at that point. But at this point, we really just need to know what you want us to focus on.
Absolutely. It's about the priorities. Think big picture. We'll have time to refine as we narrow down the issues. And I will just point out a couple of things if there are no additional questions. The video is posted on our website. So if you go here to charter2019.nyc, it'll be right on the homepage. We hope you guys will follow us on Twitter. You can retweet us. The commissioners have been doing a lot of mini videos that are either explainers about certain issues, and we expect to expand that and do more videos as the process moves along. They've also done, mini introductions, what are the commissioners' interests and goals, and that will likely be the easiest way. We'll notice everything for the usual channels and the emailing community groups, and I'll pass around an email sign-in sheet for you guys if you're interested in receiving information from us that way. But our social media, I think, is the best way to just really stay tuned to what's going on, and we'll be doing a lot more of these kind of graphics and explainers to make sure that the community really understands. We want to make sure that folks don't feel like this charter revision snuck up on them. So you don't have to have an idea, tell us what you think, and then ultimately come out and vote.
Sorry, I'm late. You may have covered this before. What's your timeline? When do you want to deliver the proposals?
So the proposals will be, they must be finalized by September. And so there will be draft proposals released in middle to late spring. Right now, what we're doing is getting a sense for priorities in the community. In December, the commissioners will start to narrow down what they explore further. And then we'll have issue-specific hearings and begin to really get into the details of what changes are being
The actual
considered.
proposals to go on the ballot, if there will
September.
be, has to be in September.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have just one.
Yes.
Maybe it's a comment kind of question. I think I'm concerned, we all have a personal view with the community boards. So I'm concerned about, is everything fair game? Some of our members and even constituents have a lot of angst about the proposals that we just voted on.
Mm-hmm.
And some may be turned off by another commission,
Yeah.
and some may say, I want this fixed first.
Sure.
Have you folks wrestled with this type of issue yet?
Yes, so the commissioners are, I think right now, actively considering. Right now, nothing is off the table. The mandate is to do a top-to-bottom review, and they can tackle any issue that they'd like, assuming, that we have the authority to do it. There are some examples where, we've received some ideas about the Department of Education. Well, our hands are really tied in terms of what the city can do there. But assuming we have the authority, we can do a top-to-bottom review, and kind of anything is fair game. That said, there are some things that I think would get preference. So sometimes you can change the charter, and there's no need for the voters to come out and opine on it to vote. So we may give preference to issues that require a vote. And in terms of the mayoral commission, I think that they're discussing that now. Nothing is off the table. And the consideration, quite frankly, is that we may not have time, right? It may not be in place long enough to really get a sense of what's working or what isn't. So that's where we are in the process. It's not off the table. It's being discussed.
It's an issue we're all going to have to wrestle with.
Absolutely. I understand, yeah. Yes.
Vicky?
I have a comment and question, something that's I've never really gotten a clear understanding of. And that is, a number of years ago, there was another commission, I think around 15 or 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it was one commission. How did we wind up, what was the process this time that we wound up with two?
Well, I think that my understanding is that the idea for a charter revision commission to do a very broad overview had been introduced in several legislative sessions, and there's been interest in doing that now. I really can't speak for the mayor and the thinking there. I think the way that I think about it is that commission was very focused on specific issues. Right. And so we didn't feel like it was duplicative because our mandate is much broader. And so we didn't view them as competing, we didn't view them as conflicting in any way. And, I can't speak to the mayor's motivation, but I know that to do the broad mandate, there has been a lot of interest for many years to kind of do that top to bottom review.
Is that what we've
If
done
I
before?
can, if I can pipe
Yes,
in for a second.
sure.
Since I was involved in both ends, both in drafting Gail's legislation and now I'm her appointee. The legislation was drafted in the previous session, the session before it was adopted. We wanted top to bottom, we thought it's been almost 30 years since the last top to bottom review of the city charter. That's what we want, which is why there were appointees from every elected official. In state law, there are 3 ways of doing a commission. Mayoral, all mayoral appointees, which is what every commission has been in recent memory. One by local law, where the local law says you get this number of appointees, this person gets this number of appointees, which is what we did, and by voter referendum, by petition. You can go out and circulate a petition. If you get enough votes, you can create a charter revision commission that way. The only one that's ever been done in recent years is mayoral commissions. I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but they tend to be agenda-driven by the person who appoints them. The idea of ours was not to be driven by any one person's agenda. So anyway, our legislation was introduced the session before, and then the following February in the mayor's State of the City address, he announced his commission. His had a relatively narrower focus, was only ended up running from about March to the end of August. And so we didn't see that as in any way presenting a reason why we shouldn't go forward with our top to bottom review. So that's sort of how we ended up where we are.
Good morning. So I think if we're to take your offer as being, the offer it is nothing is off the table, is this the process where if we look at, say a land use issue, with how the land use timeline goes, is this something where we can pipe in and say, we think there should be additional steps or maybe not the same timeline?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And second,
And Shah,
yes.
just that sentence that you said, if that's what you want us to look at,
Yes.
get us that one sentence by the end of this month. And then you can put meat on it over the course of the next 3 months.
Okay.
Because we'll probably end up having some kind of forum on land use, at which point you can explain what you mean more, but
Yes.
at least let us know
Okay.
if that's what you're thinking.
Right, because we have a Committee Board 12, we had just at a short period of time, just many land use issues, and we wish there was like some way we can actually get a second bite at the apple, but we'll bring that up.
Yeah.
So my second point, if nothing is off the table, is this the right time for us to say that the 2018 vote regarding term limits should be repealed? I mean, you're,
If that is what you would like,
Right.
yeah, now is the time to put anything on
Okay.
the table.
but on the table meaning we're not going to address this, or is this something that is it a merit sort of comment to make? Like, we didn't think that there was enough time on this commission. We didn't think people knew enough. So repeal it until we have more time. Is that a something that would be looked at, or just like, there's just griping from the voters, therefore we're not?
It will be considered. So when I say put it on the table, it means right now we are tracking every single idea. And we send all the testimony that we receive to the commissioners, and we send them the list of these are all the ideas. And so, we could put this idea has come in 200 times. This idea has come in once. And that doesn't necessarily mean that one will be weighted more than the other, because the commissioners will use a variety of factors. It will take into account what the priorities are of the community. It will take into account what we've got the authority to do. Like I mentioned, there may be preference to things that require a vote. So it'll be one of many factors. So when I say on the table, we're trying to get a sense of all the different things that people want the commission to look at. And then from there, in December, they'll start to pick out what issues they'd like to explore further.
Just as a follow-up to that question, will we be told, or will those factors be shared with the community, with general public so that there is some sort of a process by which those decisions will be made?
So I think that there will be discussion about that at the public meeting. It's not gonna be the only chance to submit your ideas, right? Like what we're trying to do is just to keep the process moving. But we also know, if over the holidays, you guys, we continue to accept proposals, and to the extent that we have capacity, we can explore more. What I would say is.
What I'm specifically asking is that when a decision by the commission is made,
Yeah.
can we know what was the process by what the decision was made?
Yeah,
And
my
so that it's
understanding is in
completely
December.
not blindsided,
Yep.
and that there was a systematic way in which this decision was made.
Absolutely. So what we plan on doing in the very near future, most likely in the next week or so, is to put information up on our website about the issue areas that we've heard about that. And I would just say that will be helpful, but just because you see your idea represented on there, your issue area, again, we would still encourage you to submit so we can get a sense of the level of interest in the issue. And additionally, there may be information about some of the factors that the commissioners are considering in terms of setting, picking what advances. In December, though, at the public meeting, there will be some discussion about the factors that are used on what moves forward.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's not like this is an RFP process. I mean, we're not gonna do a score sheet on each, so you'll know, oh, this proposal got a 97 and this proposal only got an 82. But we'll have some discussion about, like, for example, and I'm just making this up, for example, you're talking about term limits. Yes, that is something that we can consider. Now, one factor people are going to look at is how overwhelmingly was it adopted just a few months before, and is it worth spending capital trying to undo something that was overwhelmingly adopted? But another issue we may look at as well is, well, if 2,000 people tell us we should relook at it, that may be another factor weighing in the opposite direction. So these are the types of things we'll look at and discuss. But again, it's not going to be like, don't expect to see like a ranked score sheet or something. But there will be discussion along those lines.
Time for a couple of more questions. Roberta, and then.
Just really quick, we have a charter revision task force, and we've divided it up so different groups are looking at different parts of it. And we're meeting December 6th, but our steering is next week, so we could come up with a couple of crucial bullet points like the zoning by next week, and then do the rest on December 6th when we have our task force meeting.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
perfect, yeah. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Okay.
The earlier you can get us stuff, and then you can add on to it, if you want to update the commission every month on where you are,
So if it's just
these
been
were our
served.
original bullet points. Now we're here, that's fine.
Absolutely. And I would also say that if you submit, you could submit supporting documents, testimony that you presented at other hearings, and you can just say, you can send it to the email and say, this is our idea and our bullet point. We expect to refine, we'll be back in touch with you with updates, but generally, this is my testimony from 2017 where we addressed this same issue. That's helpful too. And if you know of other jurisdictions that do it some way, you can say, I don't know exactly if this would work for New York, but I heard in Seattle they do it this way. Anything like that is helpful.
When we send these in.
Wait, excuse me, Anthony, I had first.
Thanks. Okay, so one of the reasons I think that Cha had mentioned disillusionment with the vote, and that there might have been a lot of people, was because we had our hands tied, and the only people speaking out about the proposal was the mayor and the people in favor of the proposal. And it seems to not be, I'll just say fair. I have other words I could use, but we'll just say fair. So can we raise the question of having ballot proposals, charter ballot proposals, not be considered a referendum or something, so that anybody who may be a city agency or an elected official could advocate on behalf of them in future city charter revision ballot proposals, so that it becomes an exception that's embraced within the city charter, if I'm being at all coherent?
Yeah, no, absolutely, I follow you. Honestly, that's a legal question, and so I'd have to go back and research our authority to do that, but I would encourage you to submit it.
Okay.
Like I'm saying, now's the chance.
Okay.
All those ideas, throw them on the table. We're researching and looking into all of the ideas. And again, because we're not expecting legal memos and stuff, we don't want to waste your time either. So submit the idea, we'll start the research, and if it looks like we have the authority, then it's something that will be on the table for commissioners to, you know, kind of weigh in versus some of the other ideas that they've got when they pick what moves forward. And we'll continue to accept ideas after November and December, but it'll be primarily in the issue areas that advance.
Anthony?
I just wanted to be sure, the proposals have to go to you directly, right?
Yes, it would be
We're
great
not
if you could.
following through you, Jim.
No,
Right. Copy you, but
yeah, that's fine.
they need to get it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jessica?
I just want to say the obvious, which is that, you know, a lot of boards have charter commits, task force. Things that come from individual boards are usually incredibly important, and when they come from multiple boards, it that much more weight. So I just want to put that out there as everyone's in the room together.
We're gonna share.
Yeah, okay.
And I think, you know, to the extent that you guys can help amplify our message to individuals within your community, that would be my ask to you now. And we just really, really, really want folks to know this is happening. This impacts your daily life, and it doesn't seem like it. You don't have to get into even the legal issues. Conversations, what is the problem? You know, our trash doesn't get picked up. We don't find out about rezoning projects till it's almost done or till it's too late. That has value in and of itself. So just encourage your community to submit. And we do love organizational or board submissions, but if you've got independent ideas, I would encourage you to submit them as well. Something about a different city agency, maybe it's outside the scope of what the community board does, but if you as a New Yorker have an idea, then please, I would encourage you to submit those as well.
I'll take the last comment or question, Bert.
Okay, you just raised the issue of communication and getting the word out there. I was just remembering the actual physical ballot where the 3 proposals on the charter revision, you had to dig for them. I mean, people who knew where it was, they
Yeah.
didn't have to continue to the other side.
You still had trouble
But many
finding
people,
that.
even then, okay? But many people didn't even know it existed. I would suggest strongly that if you have any kind of influence in the physical, how the ballot's gonna look, that it should be standalone. And
Okay.
right out there, so people don't miss it.
Well, I appreciate that, and we'll certainly
I
run
don't know what
that.
influence you have over the, what is it, the Board of Elections? and-
Yeah, and again, I don't know, but it's certainly something that we can look into, and I appreciate it. And if not, then it's on us, and I hope that you guys will join. It's on us to educate the community, right? The good news is that we are at the start of our process, and so there was some awareness raised about the ballot proposals in 2018, so we just want to build on that. We don't want to, you know, we're like ready to dive in right now and start educating folks, like what is the question, how do you find out more information. We're also looking to, you know, with our pamphlets, really do our language access rollout, and we did our first info session all in Spanish with a group of tenants' rights, I guess a membership group. And so we've got the time, but we need your help amplifying the message. There's no way that, you know, our small team can really do it on its own, and it's got to be community driven. So we're not targeting specific groups to reach out to, we're just trying to reach out broadly. There will be information about the timeline coming up on the website, but this week, now that the election is done, this coming week, we intend to kind of bulk up our website. You should have information about the timeline, you should have information generally about the bullets, you know, kind of the buckets that we've heard so far. Again, all our videos from the hearings are up, the written testimony is posted, and our pamphlets and translations will also be posted on the website. So I would encourage you this coming week to take a look at it.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your patience. Now, since we,
Is the board gonna have a public hearing or something and you want somebody from the commission staff, call Indiana or
Yeah.
call me.
And I check this info email, so anything that comes through in terms of outreach requests comes directly to me anyway. But we're thinking about doing in the spring, like, sort of town hall sessions, you know, maybe 2 or 3 per borough in different geographic areas, just to make sure, again, like, we really are committed to making sure that this doesn't sneak up on folks. And we've got a year, but we need your help.
So I know, I want to take advantage of the fact that we now have quorum. So is there a motion to adopt the November 15th, 2018 Borough Board minutes agenda? Motion, second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Is there a motion to adopt the Borough Board minutes from October 18th?
Motion.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Do we have, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Next, we're gonna do, I know everybody wants to get on to their first and second jobs of the day, right? The third job for many of you. We've been joined by Councilmember Mark Levine. Before Councilmember Mark Levine gives us any updates or announcements, if we can turn to our Borough President report.
Okay, well, we're gonna do this really quick, only because I wanted, while everyone is still here, to make sure that everyone met all our new staff, because a lot of them are in the room today. So I was wondering if maybe first land use folks could just, even some who, some old and some new, but who's ever here, could maybe stand up and just say which boards you do, or what your name is, or something like that. James, you start, because you're our new director.
James Lloyd, Deputy Director of Land Use, started here beginning of August of this year. Thrilled to be here. I came from 4 years at the City Council, where I supported Councilmember Levine, among many others. So very happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lizette Chaparro, I cover boards 4, 5, and 7.
Stephanie Chan, I cover boards 6 and 8. Sarah Vivier, I cover boards 1, 2, and 3.
And I'm Orlando Rodriguez, the planner for boards 9, 10, 11, and 12.
Woohoo, okay.
All right.
And then, big news in community affairs. Rosie, you wanna stand up and say?
Rosie
hi?
Mendez.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back here and to see a lot of familiar faces. I started Tuesday as the Director of Community Affairs, replacing Lucille Sanhai after 4.5, almost 5 years of extraordinary work. I'd like to introduce the senior staff of the Community Affairs. First, we have Andrew Chang, representing boards 1 and 2. Natalie Espino is not here. She actually has a district service cabinet meeting with Board 12, representing boards 8 and 11. Lisa Lopez, and then we have 3 new members to the team. First, someone who's not new to the Manhattan Borough President's Office, but new to Community Board 6, is Brian Lafferty. And starting 1 week ago, and it really confuses us because they're both Brian L's. Brian Lewis, representing Community Boards 3 and 4. And starting this last Tuesday as well, April Adams, representing Community Boards 7 and 9.
Thank you. Okay, before I do the rest, let me turn it over to Councilmember Levine.
Thank you very much. What a great team, Rosie. So happy to have you back. We're doing a hearing today at 1 on the latest threat to immigrants in New York City and beyond from the Trump administration. It's a threat that's not been given adequate attention. Many of us are aware of the attack on DACA recipients or the absurd idea to revoke birthright citizenship. But what we're facing in changes to what are known as the public charge rules is at least as serious, if not more. This is a long-standing policy that people who have green cards and seeking renewal and permanent residency would have their application, it would be prejudicial to their application if they receive some form of public benefit. Traditionally, that was interpreted to be cash benefits, but the Department of Homeland Security has put out a proposed change to those rules which would radically expand all the public benefits which would be held against an applicant for permanent residency. Again, we're talking not about undocumented immigrants here. These are folks who are legal residents, and green card holders. And most alarming is that publicly subsidized health programs, including Medicare and Medicaid, of course, would be held against immigrants in applying for permanent residency, which, to put it in stark terms, would force the family to either give up health care or potentially lose their citizenship or their residency status. This will have devastating public health consequences and devastating financial consequences for New York City and beyond. We already have faced a decline in the willingness of immigrants, documented and otherwise, to seek medical attention because of the climate of fear in the Trump presidency. And it's becoming ever more common for immigrants not to seek medical care until they are in crisis and land in an emergency room, which is, of course, the worst thing for the patient, but also happens to be very bad for the finances of our public hospital system, which is where disproportionately the uninsured in general and undocumented and other immigrants are landing. And if you now revoke things like Medicare and Medicaid in these families, then they're not going to have the option to get preventative treatment, to get their annual checkups, to get their vaccinations, and more the emergency rooms are going to become the primary care provider of last resort. So we are holding a hearing today. It's a combined hearing between my committee, the Health Committee, the General Welfare Committee, and under Steve Levin, and the Immigration Committee under Carlos Menchaca, to shine a light on this and to talk about our counterattack. This, as I mentioned, is a proposed rule change, and there's a 60-day comment period. This is, we're about halfway through that period. It's open till December 10th. And we're trying to get, advocates are trying to get 100,000 people nationwide to file comments. And in fact, at our hearing today, we're going to pass out laptops, and people are going to be able to write in comments right on the spot. There also are a number of players who are preparing legal challenges. We expect that if the rule's approved, there'll be a fierce legal challenge. And we're exploring whether now that more immigrant-friendly leadership has taken over Congress or taken over the House, whether there could be a political angle here, and we're in touch with all our federal representatives to do that. This is going to be a long fight, a big fight, and one that is not getting, as I mentioned, near enough public attention from people who otherwise should be very concerned about this. And lastly, I'll just make the point that public health and contagious disease doesn't care about the party affiliation of the patient or the immigration status of the patient. And the reason why we have a system in this country to support the health of everybody is in part because diseases are contagious. And if you look at something like tuberculosis, where we see a clear decline in the willingness of patients to seek medical treatment, in the last year or two we've had a reversal in the decades-long decline, and TB's on the rise again. And TB doesn't care what the immigration status of the patient is, and so all of us are at risk if we see a rebound in that epidemic. And we've just got to avoid going back to a world where a large segment of the population is not seeking medical care. That's bad for them, it's bad for all of us, and public charge is the latest front in this war. Come today at 1 if you can in the chamber.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just a quick question, Councilmember, you referenced that you were giving out laptops, so what is the site that people can comment on?
While we're doing other updates, I'm going to get you the URL, and I'll read it out in a few minutes.
Because I'm on the Bellevue cab, so we can, I can get that out to, not only the community board members, but the Bellevue cab members as well.
Give me a couple minutes, I'll figure it out. Thank you.
We should try to figure it out also to do a social media
Absolutely.
push on it. We're going to begin with, you had other comments?
Yeah, but I have just two other questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
One is, I just want to make sure everyone knows about our event on Saturday, My Brother's Keeper, which is a really important initiative that we're involved in. It's aimed at increasing educational outcomes for young men of color, and it's something our office has been real involved in, and there's a big event all day Saturday, so I just want to make sure everyone knows about it. We have flyers on the table. And the second thing is that we've been involved in an issue around new statues in Central Park, and Rosie's going to talk about the way the boards, we'd like to have a little bit of board support for that if possible. So if you can
Thank you. A couple of years ago, the mayor created a monuments commission. And when I was in the city council, my colleague Inez Barron from Brooklyn had introduced a resolution to remove a statue that was in Central Park, and it was located like 103rd Street on the east side of the park. It was a statue of Dr. J. Marion Sims. He was a supposedly renowned gynecologist, did a lot of, however, it's come to light that he did a lot of experiments on enslaved black women. In April of this year, the Public Design Commission voted to remove the statue. Unfortunately, they moved it to Brooklyn, which didn't make Inez very happy. But they moved it to the Greenwood Cemetery, where the doctor is buried. So I guess that was their thought. Anyway, the borough president has been involved in trying to get a statue of Elizabeth Candy Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. We've given you her testimony to the Public Design Commission. In October, there was a group of women who've been working on this, Pam Elam, and I can't remember the other name. They are the president of the Statue Fund and its Monumental Women Campaign. So a site has been chosen at the northern end of the park. The borough president thinks it's a great location. However, in order to move forward, we need board resolutions from the 5 boards that surround Central Park. We got a resolution from Community Board 10. We can make that resolution available to the community boards so that you can see a sample of it and replicate it and change it as fit for your board. So we need resolutions from boards 5, 7, 8, and 11. I will be in touch with the boards about that. However, we would appreciate resolutions from the other boards. And there's a lot of activity throughout Manhattan with the women's rights movement and the women's suffragettes, and I can provide that information. I have a list of things from different boards, but I'll save that in the economy of time so we can get to the rest of the agenda. Thank you very much.
We're about to make history now, folks. We're about to finish this meeting in about 20 minutes.
Hold on a
I
second.
know everybody has to
I'm sorry. If you need someone to come to your committee or full board to make a presentation, then I could arrange that with some of the staff here at the borough president's office.
And you'll send the resolution that we send, okay.
All right, next we're going to start with someone who made history of their own. Our very own Shah is the first Muslim elected judge of the Borough of Manhattan. Congratulations. Which unfortunately means we won't have you here next month either, right?
Next month will be my last. Last month.
Can't sit on the bench and sit on Borough Board?
No, that I can't do. Next month will be my last month, so you can't get rid of me that quickly.
Great.
And I'll have something would like to say to everyone next month.
Well, congratulations.
So stay tuned. Thank you. And thank you all for your kind words. I mean, that was anyway, I'll say it for next month. But being part of the community board, and that's why this ballot proposal was so disheartening, is that community board helps in many ways that you don't even think about how it could help you and help your community. So I hope that's revisited. Community board 12 always amazes me in the terms of the work that is done and the innovative work. So 3 things I would like to quickly touch on. The first 2 are quick, and then the third is something I would like to share, and I will be sharing. We're having the groundbreaking of the hotel on 181st Street and Amsterdam Avenue. That's significant because it's the first, I say, proper hotel that has mixed use, including office space north of 125th Street. And we were able to negotiate a lot of community givebacks through that project, so we're happy to see that going. We're having a public hearing on Monday. In Northern Manhattan Community Board 12, we have, I think, the least amount of landmarked properties, I think, citywide, and we're having actually a public hearing on one that's being proposed in Inwood, so we're hoping that one will equal to 2 and certainly more. The third is something I'll share with everyone. Two of our, and we support something that Jessica mentioned about having more people involved in issues makes it a bigger issue. We're very big on joint resolutions on Community Board 12 because the issues really go through 9 different committees, but when we put it out singly, it's like, this is a X committee issue, and it really isn't. It's joint issues. So our Housing Committee and Business Development Committee just passed a resolution to, and this was something I think is innovative, because I'm not sure if I've seen this, and this actually might be first in the city to be done, proposing the changes to the Community Reinvestment Act that was enacted to help combat the control the discrimination in banking rules to communities of color, and that the proposed changes are actually, in our view, weakening those guidelines. So we're passing a resolution to oppose the changes, and if it's the first, then I hope everyone will sign on to it. I'll share that resolution once it's signed, so that, again, it's not a CB12 issue, it's not a community of color issue, it's all of our issues. And with that, I want to thank Aldrin for your kind words also. Thank you.
Next, we have Community Board 11.
Hi,
Can I just
everyone.
jump in very quick? I have the website. It's very easy. It's protectingimmigrantfamilies.org. And there's a lot of background on the issue, and there's a place to click on the homepage, and you can file your comments. Indiana tells me, for people who really want to go right to the source, that just going to the federalregister.gov, it's pretty easy to find. But the site I mentioned has a little more of the big picture and background information and makes it very user-friendly. So again, protectingimmigrantfamilies.org. Sorry.
And if there's a template letter or things like that, you can also upload.
There is.
We did that during the citizenship question, public comment period.
They do ask that you customize it a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah.
Even if it's just 30%, so it's in your voice, but absolutely.
Community Board 11.
Hi, it's good to see everyone. I've been gone for 2 meetings, so first I want to say thank you to Alita Camp and Community Board 8 for putting together a great educational forum. And I want to thank each and every Manhattan Community Board that signed on and supported that effort. I thought it was wonderful. I want to thank Padmore John from Community Board 9 for the work that he's doing on the J. Marion Sims statue and trying to coalesce a group that will get something done and have whatever's put there reflective. And so I wanted to thank that. And I wanted to thank the Manhattan Borough President's Office for the New York City County delegation that went to Providence, Rhode Island regarding Census 2020. It was a very informational session, an informative session, and I'm hoping that we will continue to partner so that we can make sure that our census counts reflect what is in our communities. With that said, just to give you a quick laundry list of things that we've been doing. First of all, to piggyback off the public charge, today at the East Harlem Health Center, there will be a forum that Padmore can go more into that, and it is regarding the public charge that was mentioned here. In Community Board 11, we've had several renamings on street renamings. Our Media, Entertainment and Cultural Center project is moving forward. La Marqueta, the landmark site, those meetings are moving forward with the Friends of La Marqueta. We're incorporating our bylaws, and we're looking to really revitalize that area with the help of EDC. Our Buy Local East Harlem initiative through Union Settlement has surpassed their target for helping local businesses, and our local businesses are thriving and growing, and they had a great event yesterday. Our Mayor's Action Plan continues to work with Wagner Houses on a various host of issues that they have. The Children's Aid Society, as you know, sold their property to development. They had their first advisory meeting with community members to discuss the revitalization of what they've kept in existence. And lastly, I have more, but I want us to move forward. I want to thank Terry Cood, who's not here, from Community Board 2. For the time that I've been here, she has always lent her information, her knowledge. She's very informative. The meetings always had that extra layer of information because she was part of the table, and she will be sorely missed. I look forward to the next leadership on community board second, but I would be remiss not to recognize her. And, I just think that we all should. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Community Board 10.
Hi, I'm Deborah Yates, filling in for Cicely Harris. I have a small report. We did have elections, and Cicely Harris was reelected, as was John Lynch for first, Charles Powell for second. Deborah Yates, myself, was elected secretary. We have Stephen Johnson as assistant secretary, Raquel Vasquez as treasurer. We also have a new district manager, Shatik Mitchell, was confirmed as a new district manager for Community Board 10. And lastly, for my short report, we did have a program scheduled for tonight for our holiday lights on 125th Street. That's been canceled because of the impending weather, and the new date is Monday, November 14th. Cicely will be back next month.
Not November 14th.
Pardon me?
No, what's the next Monday is?
Yeah, the 19th.
19th, okay,
Yes.
I misheard you.
Sorry.
Community Board 9.
Good morning, everyone. Always happy to be here, very early on Thursday morning. A few things. I want to just follow up with what Nessa said in terms of the trip to Rhode Island, addressing the census. Very eye-opening. I think we definitely need to be on top of this as much as possible because it doesn't seem like there will be much support federally. Bare minimum will be provided, and in order for us to really get, that real turnout and all the benefits that come with everyone indicating and saying that they are here in the community, is going to be on us and our community-based organizations to do that support. And with the support of the board president's office, I think we will be able to do it, but it's going to be a heavy lift, a heavy task, and that we need to start planning now. I do not expect to see much support from the federal government, and the fact that that question of citizenship being on that will definitely deter to some extent, although I know there are a few court cases that's going on about it at the moment. So definitely need to keep our eyes open on that. We have been working with a few of the other boards, Board 9, Board 10, and 11, in terms of being able to support the removal and removal of Jim Marion Sim statue and replacement. It is something that we're trying to get as many people in the community to have suggestions and have input, so that when you're walking by, whatever goes up there, they say, I had a voice in making that determination. There's a timeline that's being put forward by the CLA in terms of when it needs to be up, but we want to make sure that it's open as much to the community as possible. And I think to some extent we are doing that. As was explained earlier, the holiday lighting ceremony, which is done together with 9 and 10, is being put off. But I encourage anyone to come there. It is a very joyous occasion. It's a matter of the community coming out and being able to be seen and to be part of something, I think, that is really gaining in traction as a tradition up in Harlem. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was that some of you may have heard maybe back towards the end of the summer that there was a Legionnaires outbreak. And so we are keeping an eye on that. As it has come out, it was a building that previously had an outbreak at Legionnaires. There's supposed to be a certain amount of self-reported and self-surveillance done by the buildings, and now that it has happened twice at the same building, we do have a concern. So we'll be looking to see what type of support, whether it's a city agency, Department of Health, or any other agency maybe you could provide so that that doesn't happen again. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Community Board 8.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining with Community Board 8 on the Town Hall. Ben Kalos last night, an avid proponent of the ballot proposals, said that it was a fair town hall. So there is so much more strength in numbers. And I look forward to working with all of you on not only the next Charter Revision Commission ballot proposals, but on other things like housing and zoning and development. Anyway, on to the census. Someone suggested forming a census committee, so we're looking into that, and that might be an interesting thing, again, to join and share ideas. We also have a voting reform committee. We were disheartened by the problems with the voting last week, the physical problems, the scanner issues and other issues. So our voting reform committee or task force is becoming newly activated to try and get the city to be more proactive. We have a hearing in 2 weeks on Fetner, who has one of the infill projects up in on Holmes. It's going to be we have invited Fetner, a NYCHA rep, and a rep from the mayor's office, and George Janes, who wrote a letter about the zoning. Apparently, the mayor is able to override the zoning resolution, which should be in the public interest. He's been doing this a lot, and I don't think the communities know about it as much, and he's doing it in this instance to put up a 50-story building that violates so many of the zoning regulations, or the zoning parts of the zoning resolution, plus it's not even 100% affordable housing. So we have had major issues with this for a long time, and the amount of money that Fetner has paid for the property or is paying is a small portion of the market value of the land. So we have a lot of issues. There are health issues too. Small business, we have a fellow, so we're working on a vacancy survey and pop-ups, potential pop-ups. And zoning continues to be a major issue. We're having a hard time getting responsiveness. We went to, I saw Molly and Roberta at the DPC training for community board chairs and district managers, and the amount of time they spend talking about how interested they are in the community and in community boards, and yet we can't get them to be responsive about zoning at all. But they did say that on closing the loopholes, which has been a big thing, that there is only interest right now on talking about the voids. And so the gerrymandering, the stilt business, all of that stuff is not really being looked at. So that's kind of disheartening too. Thank you.
Thank you for Community Board 7.
To add to that, city planning is scheduling a zoning, a land use seminar for new board members on December 4th, which is the night of our full board meeting. And I've had a back and forth with them about the fact that I'm not sending 14 members to not be at my board meeting, so I won't have a quorum. And it sends a bad message. So their latest thing was that they would send training materials to us. And we sent back a memo saying that they could send a trainer to come and train.
Yes.
We'll see where that goes.
We're also doing our land use 101 training, right, in the end of the month as well.
Well, you do yours,
So
but you
we'll-
do, and you always have 2 days, so if you
Yeah,
get,
it's the 29th, I believe.
but you never, you know.
Yeah, I'm just.
But it's important for them to have been able to accommodate all community boards.
You know, I mean, I just thought it was very disrespectful of, you know, had it not been a full board meeting, I wouldn't have had a problem, but it's just very disrespectful. We have, on our bylaws, we have a term limit on co-chairs, and the 6-year mark is February of 19, and I have 9 co-chairs who have served for 6 years. So there's going to be some major changes. There's also a small group of current chairs who are going to have an alternate amendment to the you know, to the challenge to the bylaws, but I don't know what's going to happen. We discovered that the district needs, that we don't think we're doing it the most effective way possible. So starting January this year, we're going to invite the committees to go out into the field and actually meet with some of the people that they're supposed to meet with and learn more about what's happening in the community. We had the Parks Committee had voted one way, and at the full board meeting, Alden was there. The people wanted a playground that no one plays in because it's in such terrible disrepair and filled with rats, over a kayak dock. And the two were switched by an 18-15 vote, at which point I realized we need a whole different approach to the process. 66th and 65th Street, which is going to affect Board 8, we had a meeting yesterday with Department of Transportation, the police, the developer, the fire department, and community residents too, at which we found out that Lend-Lease went yesterday morning to apply for the permit for what they were already doing, which they did not get, which is to have the one lane of traffic is closed for pedestrian walkway because they're using the sidewalk. From 7 to 3 every day, they were bumping out another section. It turns out DOT did not give them the permit for it, And there's now an embargo between the 14th and the 2nd of January because of traffic for the holidays. So the police were there. We will now check every few weeks to make sure they have the correct permits before they do anything like that. But it was an eye-opener. The other thing is we met with Silverstein Properties, who bought the ABC site, and they came to us, and we're setting up a committee to work with them. This is just going to be a major impact to the community. It's 2 huge sites on West End Avenue and 66th Street, and a huge site on 66th and 67th, which will also impact. So we'll keep everybody informed as the transportation issues.
Community Board 6.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I want to thank everybody for working together as chairs on the zoning issues, and hopefully we can keep addressing that with city planning, because that's huge, and it's maybe this charter commission can deal with this, but we just need to keep fighting that fight, and the term limits as well. So I love that we all work together so well and communicate. I'll just bring up one issue. We're working on the East Side Coastal Resiliency with CB3, and the mayor's office in DDC has a community forum. They've come to us already a couple times with not a lot of design ideas, but they scrapped basically the whole design plan that they had come to us. We've been working with them for 3 to 4 years. So they came to us less than 2 months ago, and they'll come back again December 10th for a community forum at 7 p.m. at Governor Health 227 Madison Street. So if anyone's concerned about Montgomery Street up to the east side, 25th Street on the East River, resiliency issues, they'll be covering that, and we'll talk about kind of some ideas around that. We're working on a lot of waterfront issues. We have a waterfront task force, and there are plenty of pedestrian and bike safety issues along our waterfront as well. So keep working on that.
Community Board 5. Vicky?
Yes. Okay, I'm just going to start off one for the record, because there's a hearing today on the Garment Center, which you all may know about, at 10 o'clock starting. I think you'll remember that last July we voted to deny unless on the proposal. Our concern was that the city, we made a request that the city make a concerted effort to find additional building owners who will be part of the tax abatement program and secure at least 500,000 square feet of permanently affordable fashion manufacturing space to remain in the garment district. We were pushing for 5 to 750. We said we wanted at least 500. And over the following months, we understood that at least 300,000 had been secured, and that the city was making every effort to reach the 500,000 goal. Well, we are dismayed, to say the least, because yesterday EDC has only secured, we found this out just yesterday, 200,000 square feet. And we understand that Gail has been working with EDC to ensure the maximum amount of square footage in the program, and we're grateful for her ongoing support. But this information from EDC just one day before the hearing is of super concern and extremely troubling. So I want that for the record. We're not happy. A lot of other people aren't as well. Quickly, our Transportation and Environment Committee, we have had an ongoing struggle to kind of wrap our arms around the proliferation of curbside buses. So we plan to hire a consultant to study the issue in other cities, which is a project that we are embarking on in conjunction with Board 4. We're pretty sure it's a borough-wide issue, and we would love to hear or receive input from other boards. We'll certainly give out what we find, right, Bert? Whatever we can come up with. Transportation, we continue to monitor the L train closure, and we will continue to provide an opportunity for our constituents to engage with us in the city. We continue to be worried about the regulations, how the new ones will be adequately enforced. Our BEX committee, which is Budget, Education, and City Services, there's been a growing concern, not only in Board 5, but regarding homelessness. And so our committee has been going out and doing some real legwork. So I just wanted to bullet the things they've done. They've met with university professors who work on the issue. They've gone out with activists and actually have done the rounds with outreach personnel and met with many of the homeless who live around Penn Station in particular. One member was able to tour the Harmonia shelter. The reason I bring this up is because of the response we got from DHS. Harmonia is on 31st Street between 5th and Madison. We had lots of questions and we had great support from our council member Powers. The tour was organized by Powers. He was very interested in seeing the facility. We were invited only after significant pushing came from his office. We had heard through the grapevine that there was pushback on our attendance, and we were not included with the scheduling. So responses to several questions ranged from confusion to slight indignation, as well as hostility and pushback, which were backed up, thank goodness, by our council member who said that that kind of information and things that we were asking is data that any city agency would need to produce. I just want to tell you what the quote was from our member. She wrote, "One point to highlight is that Councilmember Powers was extremely supportive to make sure that they let me ask questions and that they didn't downplay my questions. I really appreciated it and thought it spoke very highly of his community board support." Couldn't have happened without him, but we did get some pretty good information. We've also been speaking with architects and developers to understand how the funding or lack of funding works to drive the building of supportive housing, and we are monitoring the work of the Midtown Community Council, who is also working on this issue, to understand just how someone can obtain housing, like how many times they've been seen on the street, why many of them, and this is from their own voices, are refusing Bellevue as a shelter. So we don't have solutions yet, and we haven't passed a resolution, but we're trying to understand this very complicated issue, citywide issue. And generally so that we can apply the knowledge to our district. The impetus came from feedback that we got from our bids. I'm sure a lot of you have heard as well. And lastly, we will be having a presentation about zero waste so that we can fully understand what this entails, and then hope to have someone from our committee attend the public meeting on December 11th on the draft scope of work for the preparation of the draft generic environmental impact statement for the proposed New York City commercial waste zone program. Okay.
Thank you. Can you go forward?
Yeah, building on what Vicki said about the bus terminal, we're working with Port Authority, consulting with the Port Authority on the redesign of the bus terminal itself. But there's a larger issue because many of the newer bus companies, which actually some of them are really fronts for the older bus companies, don't use the Port Authority. They scatter throughout our district with pickups and drop-offs. And now what's happening is some of the companies that use the bus terminal just decided, oh, everybody else is out there. Why are we paying Port Authority?
And they can do it.
And they just, they manipulate, this one particular company just didn't pay their rent to Port Authority. And of course, Port Authority threw them out. So where do they want to drop off? 42nd Street. Right across 8th Avenue in Community Board 5. So we said, this is ridiculous. Because redesigning, from our point of view, redesigning the Port Authority doesn't necessarily go all the way and solving, I put quotes around it. The transportation issue about buses, drop-offs, pickups, where are they? I mean, if you go back historically, the bus terminal itself was planned and built in the late 40s and 50s because of exactly this problem. And when buses were developed as an intercity transportation mode in the 30s and the 40s, there were scattered pickups and drop-offs on the west side. So they said, let's build the bus terminal. So anyway, long story short, with Community Board 5, we're commissioning a consultant to study what has happened, how has Boston, how has DC, how has Philadelphia treated these drop-offs and pickups. And I've understood that DOT is actually going to be doing a study of New York City and what's going on here in New York City. I don't know where that is right now. It's just planning, talk, or actual implementation. But that's something really important to us, the bus terminal and the whole transportation. Additionally, on the west side, we have Avenue 10 and a half, known as the Hudson Boulevard, between 10th Avenue and 11th Avenue. It's inching its way, and we are helping in the birthing process. It's land assembly, it's a park, and it's development, and they're trade-offs, and we're doing it block by block by block. We still have about 3.5 blocks still. We just had a meeting last night on, it's the third to last block, how we're assembling that, getting a full assemblage, buying people out, transferring development rights. There's questions. Some people on our board for it, some are against it. Which is fine with me. I mean, that's why we have a board of 50 people. Not everybody's going to be in lockstep. One thing I just want to bring to people's attention is that, like, I used to be co-chair of the, well, I like the idea of term limits, chairs, I never thought of that. I used to be co-chair of our business license and permits committee, and sometimes, particularly small business owners would come, and English was not their first language, and they were having difficulty communicating to the committee members what they needed, and the committee members were having difficulty understanding. So we did some investigation, and we found out there's something called language line solutions. You're aware of it?
Yes.
I wasn't aware of it, okay? It's used by some city agencies, Department of Health, Mental Hygiene. It's a cost, $1.25 to $2. I'm not sure how they price it out. But you could have it on your phone. And if someone comes, you can speak to me what your language is, and I can get an instantaneous, it's United Nations translation, right there. The phone picks up what they're saying, and then translates for me just about. And so we've made this available. The board is, we have a couple of extra dollars in our budget, squeezing it out, and we're paying for it. How we just started it, I can't tell you how extensively it's going to be used, but it's available to our board members now in our committee. And I hope when it's needed, they will use it. Okay.
Thank you for that. Community Board 3?
Hi, good morning. I'm David Ford, the Vice Chair of Community Board 3. Firstly, I'd like to say to Terry and Brian, we look forward to working with you, and more importantly, the pride and joy of Community Board 3, our former council member. It's great to have you here in the Borough President's office and to be working with you again. Also, our Chair, Alicia Lewis-Coleman, wanted me to wish everyone on behalf of the entire Community Board a happy Thanksgiving. Aldrin, it was also a pleasure going to the Rhode Island trip for Census 2020. It was eye-opening. One of the things that we're facing right now is there's a proposal to do a street naming for the BC Boys, and we're going to be bringing that issue up before the board, but there's some confusion because the board had in some way rejected the proposal, so we're bringing it back. So if anybody has any guidance, we can speak about it offline, and you can contact Alicia if you've had an initiative that was denied by your board, but you want to bring it back up. Some people are saying that you can't bring it back up, but I'm going to dive into that situation so that we can correct this, because throughout the city there are street namings and memorials for hip-hop legends that are coming out, and as you know, in certain classes and populations, hip-hop is very important, especially for millennials. So we're working on that, and I'm committed to that project. The New York City's Parks Department is putting out an RFEI for the Borough bathhouse. It's a unique space. It was the city's first public bathhouse. It sits on public land in the perimeter of NYCHA's Borough houses. NYCHA's not required or responsible to clean up the area. Safety concerns and vermin issues are there. Parks doesn't have the funding to clean up or demolish it. The property will only have a 20-year lease, according to Parks, and no housing is being sought for the space. Community stakeholders would like to see another type of community space on that land, so we're working on that issue. And lastly, we're still working on 2 bridges, which is a development issue on the waterfront. The L train shut down, those issues are going. I see already on 14th Street, they're starting to put the busway mauve-colored sand on the ground. and the detention center and other major issues we're facing. And that's it for today. Thank you.
Community Board 2?
Hi, I'm Dan Miller. I'm the first vice chair. I'll also be the first vice chair coming in. Carter Booth will be our new chair. Thank you, Terry, for doing such a great job, as you've been recognized by all the other community board chairs. Our most important, I'm going to talk about 3 different things, and we have many different things at Community Board 2 that are important, but the most important thing for us is Elizabeth Street Garden. Elizabeth Street Garden is a small park where families go and they plant flowers and they have Halloween parades, and it's a place for the kids to actually feel the soil. And what's happened is city planning has gone ahead and certified housing to go there. It's a city plot. And we've explained that at 388 Hudson, across from J.J. Walker, there's a much larger 9,000 square foot space, can put in 3 times as much housing, and yet our voices and our community and Little Italy that has been pointed out by Parks Department having a dearth of open space, very little. This one area that our community can go to is being denied. And we're going to do whatever we can. We have a task force. We've had task force in order to, and we'll actually write a response. David Gruber is going to be, our former chair is going to be writing a response to the certification, but any support that we can get from the other community board chairs would be greatly appreciated. If you've ever seen this park, it's very, very special, and there's nothing around it. And we have 3 other options where city housing could go.
Could you send around some language that you'd like to?
Sure. Okay. That's first. We also, I'm chair also of the Economic Development and Small Business Committee. We are going to be writing a response to the SBGSA, and a resolution that I'm writing will be presented to the full board. Ultimately, we all agree that retail blight is a crisis, especially in our community where Bleecker Street, Christopher Street, 8th Street has all been vacated. The idea, my idea was to bring in bids and developers, landlords, and tenants in different panelist groups, so we can hear from all different points of views. And so we're making a recommendation to mitigate the landlord-tenant leasing structure with both entrepreneurial investment and shop owners in mind. And so we're hoping that some of our recommendations can be seen as maybe a fresh look on how to actually take another stab at the SBGSA, which we feel is very important, but is flawed and doesn't work as it is written today. And lastly, everybody has heard probably about St. John's Terminal down on Houston Street. There was a little bit of a bait and switch in that Mueller process where you might have read also in many publications that it's going to be probably going into Alphabet, which is the parent company of Google. It's going to be one singular unit now, so one big block of more just corporate workers that are going to be flooding already an overburdened Spring Street station and one train station down on Houston as well as in Spring. And but we're hoping, and we were supposed to have retail because that whole area is kind of deserted, and we're hoping the original ULURP asked for retail and it was going to really invigorate the neighborhood, and that's not going to happen anymore. But there are possibilities, and especially with a Democratic Albany right now, we're hoping to kind of create some kind of sharing of the wealth between Pier 40 across the street, which we've been working on since forever, since the beginning of the park, and to create a symbiosis between the two, in the sense that workers have to get there some way, and we need to get public money across the street in order to create a great athletic facility that I'm sure all the community boards and all the residents use to this day, because it is the only open large area where soccer and baseball and lacrosse and many schools use it. And the idea is hopefully this can create an impetus for both. And that's just in the very, very beginning stages. That's all I have.
Thank you. Stevie, what?
Last one, so I'm just good morning, everyone. We will wrestle with similar issues. I'll just give you kind of our top 3, which is taking a lot for us. And first is land use. Besides the super tolls and all those impact of the overdevelopment, the Manhattan Detention Center is still kind of floundering as to where we're going. We're working very closely with Community Board 3 to fill out a plan for what the city has done unilaterally. The seaport, which is a major city asset, we still have struggled with the New Market building, one of the last piers there, that really should be used for community benefit. But yet we haven't built a private partnership yet to figure that out. And this is less controversial, but Governor's Island will experience a great deal of development. So there'll be a major ULO going on with all three of these. And then, is there a question? Oh. I mentioned the super tall. Our major issue is because of after September 11, the investment and the rebuilding that went on was not planned well. No. All the best intentions. Our traffic was almost at a standstill. Harvard is piling up because we've converted old Class B office buildings to residential, and now you have families generating it. So, and then the school system, and that's really our last one. We even had bad news of a closure of a virgin school here, PS 150, where STA, DOE, without any heads up, stopped the negotiation with the landlord. The lease is ending, and they'll be out. And now we'll have to move 180 students to another school here. And this is an issue about how STA, DOE deal with the community. The communication way and the planning is almost criminal at this point. So, and we have one other thing with street naming too, which is all these things are very emotional. So we'll have the same thing about bringing back a resolution. So, thank you all.
Thank you.
Well, I guess we can submit our minutes to the Charter Revision Commission.
I know.
Enough there to.
Exactly.
If we have now elected official representative report outs? Any elected officials, any city agency report outs? Yes.
Good morning, my name is Timothy Borough. I'm with the New York City Civilian Complaint Review Board. I'm the community organizer here for Manhattan. Just really quick, so on February 5th, we are going to have our first youth summit at New York University. It's actually going to be at the Silver Institute for Poverty, Policy, and Research. This event is actually being put together by youth. It's actually the conversation is going to be controlled by youth. The panel will consist of youth. The audience will consist of youth. And this is also in an effort, as always, to improve police-community relations. So this will be an excellent opportunity to collect data from that conversation because the youth have a different perspective of policing in the community than I do. Right? And so this will give us an opportunity to collect that data to see what's going on and if necessary to make recommendations to City Council for any changes in policing policy and procedure going forward. So the event will be from 9 to 4 p.m. We will serve breakfast and lunch. There will be art that will be displayed by youth. It may be in a variety of forms. It may be from paintings to dance or express word. And we're just looking for as much involvement from youth as possible to come out. So the age range is like from 10 to 24. And we're asking for any youth organizations that you may be affiliated with or associated with, if you can inspire them to come out and participate in this conversation.
If you can email, I don't know if you emailed us anything, you can email us and we can help distribute. What date was that again?
It's going to be February 5th.
Okay, yes.
Do you have that?
And CCR, let me just mention, thank you for coming. And CCRB is also presenting tomorrow at the Borough Service Cabinet, so all your district managers will also get the information in as well. So.
Oh, excellent. And that way we can help distribute it.
Yeah.
Any other announcements, comments?
That'd be great.
Beta NYC, anybody else?
Hi, my name is Noel. So there's been an ongoing conversation that we've been having with district managers across Brooklyn and some in Manhattan around a CRM, and which is essentially a constituent database, to track constituent complaints. There's been ongoing conversation, so it's now moving into the phase where we're working directly with Do It, and Do It has consolidated quite a bit of feedback that we've received from Brooklyn and Manhattan, and so hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to tell you kind of like a more concise roadmap of what you would want to be bringing to your boards around how much money you would want to allocate, hopefully around January, February, to set aside for the next 2 years and trying to capture kind of like this little bump in budget that you've received. So that's the update on the CRM. The second thing is the Charter Amendment number 2, which was around the Civic Engagement Commission, had a provision inside of the original report that came out from the Charter Revision Commission that mandated that Do It would essentially create websites for all community boards. That really doesn't affect Manhattan because all 12 Manhattan community boards have websites. Now granted, they range in scale from self-maintained to team site. So Do It is now going to be in the process of identifying a better solution than team site, and then exploring a kind of like a pathway to get that out to all the different community boards. And Do It, the Manhattan Borough President's Office, and Beta NYC will be working in conjunction to make sure that Manhattan boards get a preview of that tool and see if we can use Manhattan boards as the first beta alpha testers with a really kick-ass solution. So those are the two updates around CRMs and websites. We also published a 70-page report based upon interviews of data challenges that's up on beta.nyc, which is explicit data challenges and data opportunities that community boards, particularly your district managers and your staff, face when looking at open data. And I will make sure that that gets sent out as an update. So that's it. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Object.
Second.
No, thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Staff there, because, you know, like this.